Lucky, and I will say my next project I believe will be a sequel for Lucky. I feel like she's one of those gift characters who comes along kind of once in a lifetime. I've written a lot of novels. Most of them have multiple characters and everything is so complicated. And it's not that things are not complicated for Lucky, but the premise came along. I was listening to a radio show. I was actually in the States. We don't have lotteries that are quite so rich in Canada, like hundreds of millions of dollars. And here, I think the highest is 50 or something. And that's Canadian, so it's a lot less, right? But I was listening to the radio in New York State on a ski trip with my family, and they were talking about um, a lottery ticket with like a $300 million payout that had not been claimed. And it was a morning show, so they were speculating on why that would happen. And talking about how, sometimes people lose the ticket or a person dies or all of these things. And then one of the DJs said, but what if somebody was wanted for a crime and they couldn't come forward because they would get arrested? And as writers and any creative person, you're kind of moving through the world like a magpie, kind of looking for ideas. And normally it's the characters who come to me and it takes a while to figure out their story, but I just was like, oh, that. And I had that. I'm like, that would be such a great, I actually thought TV show. I was trying to develop a TV show at the time. So I had that with me, but I don't love the reading or watching experience where the person is truly irredeemable and you're feeling kind of gross about rooting for this criminal. I'm all for like redeeming people, but when they actually are. So I thought, I don't want to write about some criminal who does things that are unforgivable. I need to figure out what kind of criminal I'm dealing with. And then my son, teenage son, loved at the time Ocean's 11 and 12, and like we'd have our nights together and rewatch those movies. And as we were watching those and the grifting component, I thought, people just root for con artists. And we were watching the TV show Lupin at the time as well. And I was just like, okay, this is a criminal that could sort of have a Robin Hood element and have a heart of gold. And that's what I really want to explore. So that's where Lucky came from. And then she really did just suddenly appear to me. Like I was on a bus going to visit my mom, who wasn't well at the time and totally preoccupied and working on the lightning bottles, by the way, and having a really hard time with it. And just not, these characters were just like in their teenage angst phase, and I didn't know what to do with them. And Lucky kind of sat down and was like, hey, here's my story. And by the way, my name is Lucky. Like I was texting my agent. I'm like, I've got it. I've got it. And she was like, this is the best idea you've ever had. And I can still feel that moment. Like she just, if it's that big magic thing that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, like Lucky may have been walking around the ether wanting to get into somebody's head, and she got into mine. I go to the library, I take out like towering stacks of books. I just had to learn how to be a con artist. And there are a lot of books that are about protecting people against con artists. Sadly, a lot of them are directed at senior citizens. So like what to watch out for. And I'd be like, okay, but how would I do this? And sort of, yeah, I just really had to consume everything I could to figure out how to be a con artist. And it actually made me realize anybody could be doing it. I think that's what we sort of weirdly love. And I did read a book about like the heart and soul of grifters that said the reason that con artists are able to operate is because of a beautiful truth, which is that we ultimately are predisposed to trust each other. So you and I could meet and you would be predisposed to, maybe depending, some people are very, very cautious or have been burned, but anything I told you, you would believe me, right? And I'd say, listen, can we talk? I have, this problem, and you'd probably believe me, and the trust between us would allow me to con you. So that's hard, right? But it's also kind of beautiful. So that there's the answer to that. And then as far as how I came up with her supporting cast, I needed, Lucky is a lone wolf. She is alone a lot. So she does have people in her life, and none of them are reliable. And that was really important for her, because you'd think if you had people you could trust, or people who were reliable or loved you properly the way you should be loved, and you were a criminal and you won the lottery, you just say, hey, cash this in and we'll escape together. But it was very important that she could not have that support, that no one in her life really could be trusted. So to create these ultimately very charming and disappointing men who I think it will be very exciting to see conveyed on screen as well, because I believe that Drew Starkey and Timothy Olyphant are just, very lovable for many different reasons. Really did kind of think of like Cary Grant. I also thought of the song Carrie by Joni Mitchell, spelled differently, but there was just something I remember meeting a guy named Carrie when I was a teenager and he was really cool. And I was like, like, you've got to be a pretty cool guy to like pull off the name Carrie. And it just seemed perfect for him. He was always Carrie right from the start. I had trouble picturing him. I did some early TV development with Carlton Cuse, and we would talk about who Carrie could be. And I had like lists of dozens of actors, and none of them really landed. And it was this Hello Sunshine development where they came up with Drew, and I can't say a lot, and I worry about certain things, but Anya is involved in the production side of things with her company, Lady Killers, and I believe what I heard is she was the one who sort of identified that Drew would be right for the role, and she had signed on to play Lucky with only the book, no script, no nothing, like years ago. And I had that moment of like, okay, she completely understands these characters, even on like a even higher level than I do, because as soon as she said they said Drew Starkey, I was like, that's him. Like it was so perfect. And then for John, I think, it's kind of a perfect grifter name. And who knows, like maybe that's not even really his name, right? You don't know. Like it could be, yeah. I mean, there's so many layers to him. So I don't know. John just seemed like a perfect name for him. I'm sure many other authors have sat here and talked about how there's so much about the story and the characters as an author that doesn't make its way onto the page. So I mean, there were so many scenes that I wrote with her mother and with so many of those characters who kind of pop in, and so much about them, and you need to convey that. Even if they're only there for a few chapters, right? You need to know that. And I think that's why I always intended to, either write Lucky for TV or write sequels. So, I know what happens next, and I know everything, yeah, I know everything about her. So, yeah, sometimes you may be reading something and think, okay, this person was just created here at the end of the book, but all of these characters are always simmering in the background. I have had every single book optioned at this point, and the last resort was actually a big option. It was Bruckheimer. Like they were and it all fell apart so spectacularly. And I was so sure that it would happen. So I mean, in some ways, I'm glad I had that experience to sort of temper my expectations. But it also got kind of weird because I'd be sitting here and Anya Taylor-Joy was attached, and all these people were attached, and I have Hello Sunshine and Jonathan Tropper is the showrunner, and everything's great. And I was still, up until the camera started rolling, I just was like, I refuse to believe that this is going to happen. Something will go wrong. And actually, a lot of stuff did go wrong. Like we had COVID, there was a writer's strike. Like I don't know how Lucky did it. And again, I talk about her like she's somehow in the background. I don't know how, but because it felt like people were jumping through flaming hoops, and somehow it did happen. I went to LA with my family in May. We got to visit the set together and watch a stunt. And then I stayed and was on set for a few days. And we pulled into this parking garage in Long Beach, and all of like this, everything was blocked off, and it was this huge thing. And you could see like there were like 150 people working, and they were waiting for me. And I just like, even talking about it, like I cried like theatrical tears. Like I just was like, I can't, oh my gosh. I was like, this is not good, guys. Like I have to go. But it was so powerful. And also like that was finally the moment where I was like, okay, unless a hole opens up, and the whole thing gets sucked into it and something bad happens, this really is real. And it's amazing. And I don't think there could be a better production team. I don't think there could be better actors. I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy and Timothy Olyphant and Annette Bening, like we were in a makeup trailer together, and I kept thinking, what will I say to her? And I thought I'll just keep it simple and I'll say, hi, I'm Marissa. It's such an honor to meet you. She got up, walked over to me and was like, hey, you're Marissa? And I said, yeah. And she was like, I'm Annette. It's just such an honor to meet you. And I was like, oh my God, you stole my line. Like there's just these things happened. And now it's kind of like getting, university diploma or things that no one can take away from you, right? I have this now. And it feels like a dream. And you're right, it is the dream. You're lying if you say that this is not what you want. And there's definitely not a day that goes by where I don't think I am so lucky and I'm so blessed that everything happened the way it did with Lucky. New York Times adaptation, this is the dream. And I just don't take it for granted. And I don't focus on what's next. I'm not just like, okay, because you can move the goalpost in these industries and say, now I have to do this, and now I have to be number one on the New York Times, or this show has to win awards. And just be like, you know what, you got to sit in a makeup trailer with Annette Bening, and that's pretty good. So, what else do I need?